Welcome, everybody. This is the last session for the APR online study course summer cohort. And this is a special presentation because we're going to have two case problem presentations. We're going to talk about them, talk about the planning components, and trust me, that is one of the best ways to study for the APR examination. This is our last session. Any enrolled participant in the APR online study course can join any of the cohorts, either the fall, the spring, or the summer. And when we are not doing a cohort session, you can continue to study because this is a self-paced online class with these web meetings that happen weekly during those cohort sessions. You can complete your APR activities, look at those check marks in all of the activities in the online course, and when you get all of them marked off, you should be ready for the APR examination, and you'll also get a completion certificate for the APR online study course. We do want to keep you very active in this group, so if you see the attendee chat up in the top left-hand corner, you can click on that tab, and you can, at the bottom, you can type in whether or not you have done a case problem response. We recommend doing case problem responses before you do your panel presentation, but it's not required. It's important for you to be able to do those case problem responses because they focus just on the planning components rather than thinking about how is my boss going to think about this or how is this going to work in the real world. You just focus on the planning components, which is an excellent way to study those materials. Also, the case problem approach that we take in the APR online study course is an excellent way to study because the case problem thinking process, the strategic process of thinking about how you're going to respond, really involves all of the KSAs, especially research, planning, implementation, and evaluation, as well as models and theories, ethics and law, managing relationships, and more. And you can see on this particular slide, I have a link to the case problem response activity. If you have difficulty finding any of the activities in the online course, I am here to facilitate that and to help you find those activities. So I am Michael Henry, your technical facilitator for the APR online study course, and we have some great APR facilitators with us today. Corey Keller, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Happy to be here. Hi, everyone.
We're really glad you're here. And Jessica Walker as well. Welcome. I'm so happy that you're here.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
And why don't we just very briefly provide just a little bit of an introduction to yourself. Corey, would you sort of explain just a little bit of your path to getting the APR?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everybody. I was just in your shoes recently. I just got my APR in February, did my panel presentation at the end of last year, and then took the computer-based exam a couple months later. So it feels weird to be on this side of the phone, but it's very fresh in my mind, so I'm really happy to help answer questions about the test and help facilitate the call today. And just for my personal and professional life, I am the Senior Director of Marketing and Communications for a community foundation in Palm Beach, Florida.
Thank you so much, Corey. Jessica?
Hi, well, my name is Jessica Walker, and it's been quite a few years since I got my APR. I did it back in 2008, and I remember being on the other side of this and being a student with Michael and the others going through the cohort. So I was always happy to give back and hope can do that more often. Currently, I work at an accounting and business consulting firm as the Director of Marketing and PR. I work for our internal, obviously our firm, promoting it and getting out into the community, but I also help some of our clients with marketing and PR as well. And I recently, last year, acquired my master's in public relations as well as my in the state of Florida, it's known as the CPRC, Certified Public Relations Counselor, so because I live in Southwest Florida. But it's a fun field.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jessica. And there was a comment that, Jessica, that is a little bit hard to hear you, so you might want to, if you're calling in, just make sure you get a little closer to that phone. And also, Whitney, I know that you are going to be reading our scenario practice question. Whitney, if you can speak now, try to speak. Otherwise, what we can do is ask you to call in to participate in the session. Are you there, Whitney?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Can you
Excellent.
hear?
Great, Whitney.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
so let's go ahead. As long as we've got you here, we're going to go right into that scenario practice question, which is one of the activities that we do in each of the modules. And I know there's a lot of work to do to study for the APR examination, but those practice questions are a great way to wrap your head around the types of questions that are on the examination. The course is self-paced, and we're here to help you all the way along. All of the modules are related to each of the KSAs that are the knowledge, skills, and abilities that were identified to pass the APR examination. You can see the percentages there for each one of those. We encourage people, and since this is the end of our summer session, we really want to help you wrap your head around how you know that you're going to be ready to pass the examination. The first step is really to explore and understand the scope of the APR. Many people come to the APR thinking that they're going to do some cramming over the weekend and then take an examination and get their APR. That ain't the way it's going to happen. It's a process of thinking, almost changing the way you think. So exploring the scope of how to become an APR is really the first step. Then the study, there are many different resources for studying. We'll talk about those in a little bit. And also then the most important strategy that we've found to pass the APR examination is to read and study, then apply what you're learning to practical situations. And then after you've done that and completed all of the activities in the online study course, we believe that you'll be ready to pass the APR examination. We keep track of the percentage complete. So if you go to, there's several places in the online course where you can see what percentage you are of complete at this point. And if you need help finding that, I'm happy to do that. Just reach out to me and I'll tell you how complete you are in terms of the activities. And we also have a very important examination experience handouts that are really only given to people when they complete 75% of the material. So that's your sort of your carrot to get all of those activities completed, because we really believe that once you do that, you are fully prepared to take and pass the APR examination. Some people take the APR online study course for professional development rather than for the APR. So we're happy to give you a certificate of completion from the online study course, and you just apply for that at the end of the course. So any thing come to your mind, Jessica or Corey, related to that study process, the enduring and sort of scope of it? Jessica, do you want to make a comment about that?
Sure. The process is a little different, especially seeing some of the documents that you have nowadays. It's a very, strategic and very thought out. But just doing a lot of case studies is going to be so helpful. So I would definitely say if you're able to take news headlines from the newspaper and practice with those, just practicing implementing everything you learn, because that's really what this test is going to be a clincher on.
Excellent. And that's a great suggestion, is that the headlines frequently have communication problems embedded in those news stories, and they have a little background, and all you have to do is follow the the RPIE process to develop a response. That's an excellent suggestion. Corey?
I love that idea, Jessica, and I would also encourage you all to give yourself enough time. I found with some of the material, I needed to read it and practice it and let it sink in over time. So I recommend even attending multiple cohorts, and like these webinars, if you're attending in the summer, I'd encourage you to attend in the fall too, because the longer you let it sink in, it really starts to take hold and show up in your work. So I wouldn't freak out if you're not grasping a particular concept really quickly. Revisit it in a month or two and see if it's starting to change and see if you can figure out, what wasn't clicking before. I found that to be really helpful. And also, it's a pain in the butt, but I really encourage you to write out test questions. I should have done it more, but I found that to be really helpful. And it'll take you a couple hours to write a solid test question. But this is such a different process, a different type of test, that when you put yourself on the other side of the equation and try to formulate a test question, often you'll find yourself understanding the material in a different way.
Excellent, Corey. That's fantastic suggestion. And by the way, if you're enrolled in the online study course, you can attend and be a participant in all of the cohorts throughout the year. We ask people to opt into it because some people like to study on their own. So we want you to opt into all the cohort sessions, and there's no additional fee for any of that. So let's jump right into this practice scenario question activity that Corey was talking about. Listen to the scenario. Remember that these are not questions that are actually on the examination, but they're like questions that are on the examination. And also we have a handout to help you see how the questions are formed for the APR examination, which will really help you be more comfortable when you see those questions on the APR examination. So, Whitney, go ahead and share with us your question, please.
All right. You are the communications director for a transportation association representing a neighborhood called the Seaport in a large city. The association's mission is to increase the use of public transportation and decrease individual personal car use. You've written the following goal for your communications plan. The Seaport is seen as an easy commute for work. As you write your objectives to address specific audiences, you are considering how you will specifically evaluate success regarding current employees. What is the best way to evaluate the success of your campaign? Select one. A, launch a social media aspect to the campaign centered on a hashtag, such as hashtag SeaportWorks, and monitor how often it is used and with what type of sentiment, positive versus negative. B, count how many times employees in the Seaport request specific materials on transportation options from your website. C, calculate the add value equivalence of positive coverage in the city's most prominent paper. Or D, ask participating member companies to poll their employees and how they get to work before and after the campaign.
Okay, this is the opportunity to enter a response in the chat window according to what you believe is the correct response, and we ask everyone to respond even if you're not sure. Okay, and it looks kind of anonymous there. So according to Whitney, the answer is D. And so here is the rationale. We ask candidates to create a rationale showing how they got to that particular answer. And let's get some feedback from our panel about the question, about the format of the question and difficulty and content. So Jessica, do you have some comments?
I think that, overall it was a very well-written question. I'm looking back to, or thinking back to when I took the exam, which again was 10 years ago, so a little, probably very different. I think Corey'd probably be able to speak better to it nowadays. But it was very well written. I like the rationale to it. I mean, all of the various things in there could be tactics or strategies for some of the other parts of the plan. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. It's a little soft.
Okay, I might have to switch to the actual phone. I'm on a headset, so
okay.
I'll do that in a minute. But it's definitely, I thought when I read over it before, it was a good question as well, and I thought the rationale was very good too.
Excellent, Jessica. Thank you so much, and we'll let you switch over to the phone, unfortunately. And Corey, do you have some comments about that question as well?
I do. Would you mind flipping back to the slide with the answers?
Sure.
I like how this question was written. I would tell you all that that is how a lot of the questions on the test are worded. I would say when you get to the answer page and it gives you your options, I would tell you that they will probably give you 3 to 4 very strong answers that you need to choose from. And there might be one throwaway that you can instantly eliminate. In this particular slide, it's pretty clear that you would want to ask the companies to poll their employees. But I encourage you to think through the other answers. Why are these other answers incorrect? I would also say that B, counting how many times employees request materials on transportation, that could be another possible research option. The other two, obviously, you're not going to want to launch a campaign when you're evaluating the success of a previous campaign. So that, I would call that a throwaway. And C, calculating ad value equivalence, you're not going to see such an easy throwaway answer in the test. But again, I like these examples, and I encourage you guys to really think through every answer and really be able to tell yourself why each answer would be incorrect, if that helps. So great job. Looks like everybody got D pretty easily.
That's great. And usually that's an indication that the question is a little bit too easy. But we might just have a really on top of it group here, which is fantastic. Joy also made a great comment that all of the answers might be correct, but one is most correct. One is the best practice. And that is really an intention of the APR, is to identify best practices rather than sort of just what might work in certain circumstances. So that's great.
Can I add something really quick, Michael?
Yes, please, Jessica.
I was just going to say, too, just to that end, is that you're also going to find sometimes answers might sound similar on tests to other questions. And like Corey was saying, there's going to be very strong answers, and very rarely will you see the throwaway answers or the ones that are just like, that's definitely not it. Because the way questions are worded and the way that the answers, the options are given to you, is you can sometimes tweak and move some of those things to where you can almost make yourself believe that that would be an answer or be a suitable answer for it. So really just take your time with it, because like she's saying, there's not going to be any easy ones that are usually knock that off the list.
Excellent. Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful comment. And Kelly, we're going to ask you to comment because you said you couldn't hear Jessica before. Jessica, I think your audio sounds just great at this point.
Okay,
so
perfect.
We're going to move on now to communication planning and the case problem approach. Obviously, we're focusing on the RPIE, research planning, implementation, and evaluation. This is considered a milestone activity. In other words, we don't really consider you complete in the online study course unless you've done this activity. We also do recommend that you do a case problem before doing the panel presentation. Now, many chapters will say, do the panel presentation before you start studying for the APR. We do not agree with that in the online study course. We believe that all of the KSAs are built into that communication planning process, and your panel presentation is going to be stronger if you understand how everything fits together after studying the KSAs. So with that, we'll talk with Mike. And Mike, are you there?
Sure am.
There you are, Mike. Okay, and one of the things we do, and Mike and Connie know this, Connie is also going to be presenting today, that we want all of you listening to be active. And the way you're active is this. Imagine if Mike came into your office and said, I've got a communication plan and I want your feedback. Here's the situation, here's the problem, here's the goal, here are the audiences, here are the objectives, here's the strategies. Give Mike feedback. And Mike, I almost recommend that you don't look at the chat window. You could go to attendee list rather than, because it's going to distract you. Yeah. And then if you folks all give tell him when things are doing well in terms of his components. Tell him when you think something needs some attention, because that feedback is an incredibly important learning experience in this exercise. So with that, Mike, and you cannot control the slides, right? So I'll need to do this for you. Is that right, Mike?
I'm sorry,
Oh,
what was that again?
no, it looks like you can control your slides.
I
Maybe
don't
not.
think so.
Okay,
No, I
I'll
don't
take
think
care of that
so.
for you. So go right ahead, take it away, Mike.
All right, so this is my communications plan for E.V. Bischoff Company. And my name is Michael Van Est. I am the marketing director and communications director for this company. And we are a commercial real estate company founded here in Columbus, Ohio in 1966. We own 3 historic buildings here in Columbus. We own 4 in Pittsburgh, 2 in Cleveland, and then we own a new office park in northern Cincinnati. We specialize in leasing office space to small to medium-sized businesses. We are family-owned. The company, as I stated, was started in 66 by E.V. Bischoff and is now owned by David Bischoff. And we maintain a full staff to service the needs of each tenant, from maintenance to security. So we lease office space to anybody from lawyers and architects to CPAs and startup companies as well. So quick little background or situation analysis here. E.V. Bischoff Company has renovated and managed historic buildings in downtown Cleveland, Columbus, and Pittsburgh for more than 50 years. As I stated earlier, we have 4 in Pittsburgh, 3 in Columbus, and 2 in Cleveland, and we just jumped in Cincinnati, so we will have to add that when I go back to it. The company, for much of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, these buildings maintained an 85% occupancy rate or 15% vacancy rate. But since 2000, however, the occupancy rate has decreased and the vacancy rate has increased. It now stands at a 53% vacancy rate against a 47% occupancy rate, which is a dramatic shift in the last 18 years. So the big problem we're having right now is our downtown office space vacancy rates are over 50% and need to be lowered in 2018. So some of the research that I've done as it relates to this problem is came up with 4 different questions. What are the contributing factors to the decrease in vacancy rates within our company's buildings? What are our competitor buildings doing to keep their vacancy rates low? How can we, as a company, improve our office spaces to attract more tenants? And what are the demographics of those who lease offices in downtown areas overall? And the research types are anywhere from formal secondary to formal, informal, and primary. And I used many databases and did a little fact-finding mission myself. The results contributing to our tenancy decrease is a lack of parking, the move of large Fortune 500 companies to the suburbs. For example, we had Chase Bank was across the street in one of the larger high-rises in downtown Columbus. And in 2014, they moved and purchased their own campus in northern Columbus, which had a negative absorption rate of 25,000 square feet. There's been a lot of downsizing occurring in downtown Columbus in terms of, especially with the larger companies like PNC Bank, like US Bank. These spaces used our company's buildings as back office space and project space over the last 15 years. And when they disappeared, we no longer had the tenants there. And we lost many tenants due to not keeping our office space up to date, not keeping the maintenance issues in check, and building a negative reputation amongst clients. Next slide. So my finding of what the competitors are doing to keep their vacancy rates low, continually updating their products by offering new amenities, including with their office leases, such as projection screens, free Wi-Fi, modern interior office designs, and flexible leasing programs, or leasing terms, pardon me. How can E.V. Bischoff Company improve their office spaces to attract more tenants? We found that offering updates throughout our buildings, servicing our elevators, creating new parking options, and adding new amenities such as audio-video equipment, projection screens, fitness rooms, updated common areas, flat-screen televisions, etc. And the demographics of those who lease offices in Columbus, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Cleveland, the majority of employees are lobbyists, lawyers, architects, marketing pros, financial professionals. The largest age group of downtown employees is between the ages of 25 and 40. Marketing and tech startups account for the fastest growing businesses in the downtown central business districts of Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh. Our goal is to establish E.V. Bischoff Company's buildings as the choice for downtown office space rentals.
Okay, so this is an opportunity where we should go back to the goal just for a moment and ask yourself these questions and provide some feedback for Mike. Does it reflect the communication problem? Is it possible to change perception, attitude, or action in this situation? Is the goal a future statement of being, and does it reflect the background situation? So here's the goal. Please do provide some comments in the chat window.
To me, this is Jessica. To me, I would like to just comment on the goal is that it needs to probably be more driven as not necessarily measurable as an objective would be, but this seems more to me in the line of like a marketing idea per se. Your goal should be along the lines of establishing our building as, I'm trying to think off the cuff here, but it just is too basic for this, in my opinion. It needs to be a little more specific on what you want your end goal to be as far as why you're doing what you're doing. Do you want to be, I know you're wanting to be the choice for downtown office space, but, you know, if you're also including historical information, you know, tying that into some of your goals as well.
Corey?
I love what Jessica said. I was actually typing something similar. I would think about this goal perhaps as it relates to perception, which I think Michael was talking about in the chat window. But maybe you need to be, you know, you want to become the premier leader of downtown office space and workforce development for millennials. You know, take it a little step further rather than just you're offering office space. What does that mean? Like, who do you want to attract, and what is that downtown office space actually offering? More than a product, right? You want to be that, I don't know, whether it's like, I think about attracting and retaining young talent. You know, I think you said your target market is 25 to 40 years old. So I would just go a little deeper into why do you need to be the choice for downtown office space beyond profitability? How do you want people to feel about your company? How do you want, I'm sure you want them to stick around for a long time. So I would just keep drilling into it.
Yeah, and there was one thing too that you said in your situation was that people perceived the buildings as being not up to date. And that seems to me to be a big problem and something that from a communications perspective you could resolve. Okay,
yeah, and
Mike,
I see in the chat window, just really quick, talking about measurable. The goal doesn't have to be technically measurable as detailed as an objective, but it needs to have some, you know, a little more detail to it. You know, you're building an entire plan for this particular statement. What is that statement? Is like Corey's saying, the perceived. You want to be seen as this, but you want to be the go-to leader, and you want to do it for, like she was mentioning earlier, the workforce. You had great research on your audience, of the people in that area that would be your target audience, kind of including some of those specifics in your goal, because it's not just sending out, flyers to all over town. You want to try to get a little bit of, specificity in there.
Excellent. So, Mike, we're going to ask you to continue, and we'll also do a little discussion about objectives. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you guys for the feedback so far. That's good stuff. The objectives we're working with here are, by December of 2018, increase awareness by 50% amongst the largest stakeholders leasing downtown office space in all cities. These stakeholders include lawyers, architects, venture capitalists, and business consultants. By December of 2018, increase awareness of the historical nature of each downtown office building by 50% amongst the various historical societies in Pittsburgh, Columbus, and Cleveland. Increase satisfaction of current tenants from 55% to 80% by December of 2018. And then by March 2019, increase awareness of E.V. Bischoff Company's buildings amongst key influencers in Columbus, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. These include city council members and local economic strategists.
Okay, and so what we're going to look at here is sort of the same thing. Are these objectives focused on that goal? Are they measurable? Are they time-bound? Are they stated as a change in attitude, action in your audience? And are they clearly, is the audience clearly identified in those objectives? So let's just spend a little moment to let our listeners provide some comments to Mike to help with these objectives.
I'll make a comment too. Mike, if your plan is to get more tenants and lower your vacancy rate, feel free to put that as an objective. You can say, lower the vacancy rate by X% in our downtown office by December. That is a measurable objective that fits in with your plan. And I don't see that here. I see a lot of awareness and satisfaction, which is great. But you can put some business objectives in here too. It doesn't have to be only awareness, perception, that type of thing.
One thing I always want to, and I am at fault for doing it as well too, because sometimes you're just thinking of the awareness factor, but awareness is such an extremely hard thing to measure in objectives unless you have a very specific start point. If you're surveying a certain group of people, that are kind of just drawn at random, you're interviewing those people before you start this process and then interviewing the same group of people afterwards to see if that awareness might have gone in the positive direction. That's one way, but you have to be very, very targeted to do something like awareness. It's usually better to be more of an actionable, very basic, and I've seen it in the chat window, people saying the who, the what, the when, how much. Those are the things that really help. So one thing I'd put in there is basically you were talking about occupancy, and that's really your target in the very end is getting people in the buildings. So increasing your occupancy rate from however many, 55% to 85% by December 2018, because the rest of your plan is going to be the implementation of how you are going to do that. It's going to give you the strategies, the tactics, the timeline, and how to measure yourself along the way to see if you're actually hitting some of the mini goals, the mini objectives, to get it out there. So you have to be careful with some of, the words you choose, and I'm at fault for it as well, because you have to look at when TV stations tell you they're making a reach of X, they're telling you that's the awareness for their audience. Well, not really, because if you were to get up and walk out of the room during a commercial, yeah, they can count that number as one that was in their ratings, for Nielsen rating type of thing, but the person was not aware of it because they walked away. So you have to be very particular in how you try to measure that.
Excellent. Great comments. And um, Corey and Jessica, both we frequently people will read about measurable objectives and understanding how it's focused on your audience rather than on sort of output of a public relations campaign rather than looking or instead should be looking at the outcome of a campaign. Do you have some comments about this approach really to try to write these objectives? Because that seems to me to be the only way people really understand how these objectives should look according to the APR. Corey?
Yeah, let me see if I can formulate words to answer your question. Michael, if you don't mind maybe going back one slide so I can look at these objectives.
Sure.
I think it helps to imagine yourself zooming out all the way to the very top of the trees where you can see the whole forest. And remember that your communication activities support the business activities, right? So what is it that you need? What do we need here? And by the research and by the problem that Mike's having, they want to lower vacancy rates. So that means you need butts and seats, right?
Yep.
So I think that will help you, all of you, as you're creating objectives. Like I did my plan based on a nonprofit that needed to raise money. So that's okay to say, we need to fundraise X amount of money by these people, this amount of people by December, period. Those are okay too. So remember, you got to deliver for your business, right? You have to deliver results. So what kind of return are your activities going to drive? And I think that will help you create a good objectives.
Well, and I want to add to that too, versus the outcome versus the output when you're looking at objectives is, you can easily say, I'm going to, and I see this a lot of times when I'm grading plans for awards and stuff like that. You see people say, we're going to release 100 press releases, by this date, or we're going to get 500 likes on our post by X date for this platform or program. That's all good and well, but that's really just measuring the work that you're doing. It's not measuring the change that you're making. And you want to try to create an objective that does more of the outcomes of things and changes the way that people are thinking, makes change in the whole thing altogether, versus just being able to say at the end of it, check that, I got 500 likes by that date, so there's one that I achieved. Again, that's just measuring what you're actually are doing. It's not measuring the change in your audience.
Excellent. Fantastic. And so let's go ahead and continue. We've got Connie Cochran on as well. And Mike, by the way, I'm going to send all of those comments to you in an email message after this meeting. So we'll be able to do that for you. And by the way, we also really want to point out the plan that Mike has is excellent. What we're doing is really just fine-tuning to the point where it's APR excellent. That's important to say, because every time these plans come through, they're well thought out, and it's no criticism at all. All it is fine-tuning. So Connie, are you there?
I'm here.
Excellent. Why don't we go ahead and turn it over to you, and please share, and we'll go straight through yours, and then we'll talk at the end.
Okay, great. So I was telling Mike at the onset, the best way to spell check your presentation and to check for errors and format problems is to go ahead and hit that send button, send it to him, and then you'll see them immediately. So I apologize. I have caught many of them and have corrected them in my final presentation. But just to give you an overview, this is my presentation is called Saving Swenson. It's a municipal golf course in the city of Stockton, California. And this is community engagement to save golf and green space in our community. I'm the Community Relations Officer for the City of Stockton. Just to give you a little information about the city itself, we're the 13th largest city in California, 64th in the nation, population of about 320,000, which is a large city, and we're very diverse. We are a young city with relatively low educational achievement, high poverty level. You can see our median income compared to that of the entire state. The city itself is about 65 square miles, and I'm talking about a golf course that out of that 65 square miles represents 214 acres. We were the largest city to file for bankruptcy. You may have heard that back in June of 2012 until Detroit filed, and then we exited bankruptcy relatively quickly in February of 2015. Our council priorities since that time have been fiscal sustainability, public safety, economic development, and infrastructure. So this is a situation analysis. Oh, am I clicking Michael here? Okay. So revenues at the city's municipal golf course, Swenson, do not cover costs. So the city has been subsidizing the operation and maintenance of the course for about $350,000 annually, and that comes out of the general fund. The course is 66 years old, requires millions in capital improvements and repairs, and eliminating that annual subsidy and need for any future capital improvements would help the council achieve the goal of fiscal sustainability. Research indicates that the golf rounds played both locally and nationally have declined by about 25% over the last 20 years, and this region in particular has overbuilt golf courses in the 1980s, and there are currently 9 other options within 20 miles of Stockton. Recreation, though, does help address all of our council priorities, including adding to public safety because it's a diversionary activity, also enhances economic development because it provides a valued amenity, and then it benefits infrastructure because it actually provides open green space that helps us meet FEMA flood control requirements. You'll see that the Swenson area residents are actually, there's a bit of a social equity problem here because the people that live around the Swenson golf course are predominantly white. Household incomes are well above the median. They're college educated. The surrounding neighborhoods actually include both city and county unincorporated areas. And the course is surrounded by single-family homes that are valued above the median for the area. About 2/3 of them are within the city limits, and then we actually have about 1/3 of them that are in the county. And we have a public and middle school directly across the street from the golf course. City owns and controls the zoning and land use for the golf course, and a few months ago went to study land use alternatives, which actually drew protests and rumors that the city planned to sell the Swenson golf course property for low-income housing. Immediately, a Friends of Swenson campaign launched with signs that indicated Save Swenson, some of them directed at the mayor saying Stop Mayor Tubbs, and this primarily launched with social media on Facebook and Nextdoor, but we also saw tons of yard signs and outreach to the media. The school district actually hired legal counsel and started threatening litigation because they felt that if we developed that area, that it would result in significant traffic and safety and unplanned school enrollment for them. And the council member who represents the district where Swenson Golf Course is located is up for re-election this year with a primary in June and a general election in November. It's not an election year for the mayor. However, he has publicly stated that he does not support subsidizing golf, and there's a community effort underway to recall Mayor Tubbs. The community trust of the city eroded during bankruptcy, and the city has to rebuild trust with the community, including increasing awareness that Swenson will not be sold and developed for housing, and gain support. We need to gain support for a plan that will eliminate that golf subsidy. So here's my problem. The city of Stockton cannot afford the annual subsidy of $350,000 annually for the operation and maintenance of its municipal golf program at Swenson Golf Course. So we did some research. We looked at how the City Council had addressed golf course costs and operations in the past. And that was from historical records, looking at City Council meetings and videos, and we looked at some of our bankruptcy court documents and also golf course white paper that was written about the decline in popularity of golf in this area. we found, and from that, we basically found that even during the entire bankruptcy, the council continued to provide that subsidy, and that subsidy was well above that provided for other recreational programs that have significantly more participants, and so there's a social equity issue there as well. The content, we did some content analysis, basically looked at newspaper articles over the last couple of years, and we discovered from that for the most part they were very critical of the way that the city has handled addressing the subsidy of the golf program. They weren't necessarily concerned about golf in particular, but they were very critical of the city's handling of the situation. Looked at complaint reviews. This looked at social media, town hall meeting comment cards, emails. We wanted to look at what were the extent of the concerns and what were acceptable options for people who are complaining about this issue. Golfers basically were not a huge component of those complaining, and it was mainly the people in the surrounding neighborhood complaining about the loss of green space if the course were used for something else. And the school district, of course, complained about traffic impacts in the shared street that we have between the two facilities. And actually, the school district was posturing for litigation. What we did, we also contacted the people that had formed this Friends of Swenson group, and we wanted to talk with them. We pulled them in and interviewed them one at a time to find out what their understanding of the problem was and what their willingness was to participate in the solution. And again, we found that most people were not necessarily concerned about keeping golf so much as they were about the impact of their property values. So I did a SWOT analysis as well, and just very quickly, the city is committed to providing high-quality recreational programs that are fiscally sustainable. We had voters who actually approved a quarter-cent sales tax a couple of years ago to support recreational library programs, and now we have this committed group of active, engaged residents who are willing to help us with a plan to maintain golf and green space at Swenson. Some of our weaknesses, though, is that while the city has emerged from bankruptcy, some residents blame our elected officials and they want the golf program subsidized. Also, the tax measure that was passed specifically excluded providing any kind of funding for golf. And the council has yielded to public protests in the past, and they've not made the funding cuts necessary to the golf program. But this is an opportunity as well, and we see that the public engagement on this hot topic is going to allow us an opportunity to educate community members about our long-range financial plan, which was the plan that allowed us to exit bankruptcy. Also, expanding programs at Swenson is really going to help us address the interests of a new demographic group that could increase participation in and funding for golf. So some of the threats we have, though, is the community is now engaged in helping us with by proposing a solution to eliminate the subsidy and a need for capital improvements. But their interest may diminish if they feel that there's no longer a threat of housing being developed. So the goal is that Swenson Golf Course will be a self-sustaining operation providing excellent golf, recreation activities and events, enriching the quality of life for the entire community. So we have three publics, primarily identified residents who live and own homes in the adjacent neighborhoods. They also attend and support golf and non-golf activities. Then the golfers who significantly impact golf program revenues, as well as they need to adapt to any additional uses that we would have at the course. And then, of course, the school district, who are elected officials and opinion leaders themselves and have also expressed opposition to any changes at the golf course. So here are our objectives. By residents, we want by October of 2018, 50% of the area residents to favor complementary mixed-use golf and non-golf activities and events at Swenson. And by the end of the year, 75% of the residents support a plan that eliminates the annual golf program subsidy. And then for golfers, we want 50% of the golfers to support complementary mixed-use activities. But by the end of the calendar year, we would really just like to see golfers not oppose the plan that eliminates the annual golf subsidy. And the school district, we want them to be aware and accept the fact that Swenson is not being developed for housing. And by the end of the calendar year, we want Lincoln Unified School District administration to endorse the plan that council adopts. So here are some of the strategies and tactics that we've been using to address these issues. We have community meetings that we've hosted, providing fact sheets to council members to use at their in-district office hours. We are focusing on gaining and maintaining support, demonstrating other uses that are compatible with golf. We've launched disc golf, foot golf, farmers markets, concerts, and we want to make sure that the golfers don't see this as changing the golf experience and continue to use the golf course. But in order to facilitate those programs, we've worked on streamlining the process for holding other golf and non-golf events at the golf course. And we've encouraged this through featuring photos of these events occurring side by side on our website and social media and printed flyers. So also, for our long-term goal, or long-term by the end of the year, we are engaging community activists. So we've formed a Mayor's Golf Advisory Committee to share ideas and identify solutions. And we started off with them by stating what our goal is and also the problem, and that we wanted to keep green space and golf at Swenson, but we needed their help. And they've been working with the mayor, and we also engaged a third-party facilitator for the meeting so that they would have somebody that they trust. Also, again, because we had such poor media coverage in the way that we've handled that, one of our strategies is to gain positive media coverage, highlighting the community engagement in the process and the stakeholders. Also with opinion pieces in the newspaper that are co-authored maybe by the mayor and his advisory committee members, and then make sure that we provide updates through established channels of communication that allow those people who've been so active on social media to be able to share that information. A lot of these people are on Facebook and Nextdoor, and I've actually seen them share the messages that have been posted and say, well, Connie Cochran said thus and such, and here's the link to the website. And that's been very helpful and very effective in communicating with this particular audience. For golfers, we also want them to support these mixed uses. We don't want them to be turned away because we have foot golf or disc golf going on or other activities in the parking lot. So we want to continue to gain and maintain support and indicate that these additional uses are not changing the experience for them. And it's been really helpful because if we share information about these other activities that are going on, as you know, there's a big etiquette component to golf, and if they see that it doesn't change that experience, it's very helpful to them. And again, featuring photos and working with the current golf course operator to share that information with the people who are golfing there. Again, enlisting golfers to increase awareness and making sure that when we do bring forward the final plan that is recommended by the advisory committee, that golfers are not opposed to the plan. For the school district, we want to make sure that we work with our elected officials to communicate effectively with their elected officials, including helping them to understand that we don't plan to sell the property and develop it as housing. And we also, in the end, would like them to take action by passing a resolution to actually support the plan that the City Council adopts. And the person that we'll be using to do that is one of our council members who is also a former Lincoln Unified School Board member, and she's a certified public accountant. So she has credibility in two areas that are important in this particular situation. I did talk a little bit about models and theories. Restoring public confidence takes time, and I think it's not something that we can just assume will happen. We have to demonstrate it in in circumstances where we have the opportunity to work with the community and regain trust. A lot of what we experienced here is some of the audience theories that we read about, identification theory, where they came together as a group, even though we mostly didn't care so much about golf, but the golfers were certainly benefiting from what the residents were protesting about. And then also the inoculation theory, because these people were sort of resistant to our messages because they'd already seen some negative messages from the Friends of Swenson in advance. Here's our timeline. The council first started studying this issue back in December 4th, and literally the last council meeting of the year this year will be December 4th. And so we will need to come forward with a recommendation and get council approval and move forward. And the last opportunity to do that is December 4th. Finally, there is a cost component here. I think this was nice to sit and focus on what this actually costs the city. So that included mostly people's time and dedicated time, and high-level managers who had to dedicate their time to addressing this issue. We did end up going out for an RFP that took procurement time, of course, community relations time, recreation staff, working with people, and then a deputy city manager who was in all of the meetings, as well as the city manager who conducted candidate interviews for our advisory committee. Of course, we had hired an outside meeting facilitator. So all of these are costs associated with this campaign. Most of the outreach that we've been doing is electronic, but there are a few things because some of the golfers really need to see things. You need to see the rules of etiquette for other activities that are going on the golf course concurrently. So there are some costs associated with this. In government, we don't think about that often. So the evaluation or proposed evaluation will be very similar to the research going in, looking at some of those complaint reviews, internet and social media, the outcome of the advisory committee, the people that actually come and speak at the city council meeting when the decision and recommendation comes forward. Little update to let you know, the advisory committee did recommend an RFP for a venue operator. The RFP was issued on May 22nd, and responses are due by August 16th. It will go to council for approval of an operator in October, and we will have a new operator agreement in place by December. What we're seeing from residents as I continue to monitor the social media and all the electronic chatter. I do see that the Friends of Swenson activity has diminished significantly. The signs have come down. The users that are on their social media sites are predominantly focused on promoting and sharing the golf and non-golf activities that are going on at the venue. Golf rounds are up by about 30% from last year, and we're seeing a lot, when you go out and do site visits, you see a lot of cooperation with these other new uses. The school district is working effectively with us and no longer threatening litigation. And I think that wraps it up for the moment.
Wow, great job. Let's get some quick comments. Corey.
Wow, okay, I'm still processing, but great job, Connie. I wrote some comments for you in the chat. Gosh, I don't know what else to say other than really good job. Jessica, let me hand it over to you.
I think you did a very, very good job with the plan. You were very thorough throughout the whole thing. And if I'm understanding from what I'm reading in the chats and stuff, that there are templates that are there to help you guys kind of flesh this process out, rather than just starting with a blank Word document and trying to break down these sections and understanding it. And it looks like you did a great job with this template. I don't know if you created it or if it's one that's in the chat or in the program. But you did very well. I think I had one comment in there about the objectives, just making sure that they're very specific. But otherwise, I think you've got it extremely well organized, and you're covering all the points. So I think you did a great job.
Great job, Connie. Excellent.
Thank you.
One thing that I kind of want to point out, just from a learning perspective, that creating a plan like this could seem very daunting to some folks, especially if you're just starting out. So what we really want to emphasize is the foundation can be very simple. So in other words, your analysis of the situation, your problem, your goal, your audiences, your objectives, and your strategies are really the foundation. And they could simply be just a couple of lines. They don't have, even though she did a great job with all this detail, I don't want to scare people away and say, I'm going to have to spend 6 months doing this particular activity. That's actually not true. You could do a very simple response, but make it correctly formatted for the communication components. And I'm happy to have Corey or Jessica say, no, that's not true, but I don't want people to get scared away seeing this kind of detail. But Connie, great job.
Well, it's called government. You need the detail in government. Could I give a shout out to Joy, because Joy did help me nailing down my problem and goal statement, and I just found like I couldn't even move forward until I really had that nailed down. And I emailed her, and she was very nice in getting back with me and kind of giving me some suggestions to tighten it up.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
I just want to, like you're saying with the simplifying it, it is, I mean, ultimately in a perfect world for public relations professionals, everything we would do would have a plan like that. But it just doesn't happen because we're all very, very fast and go and busy all the time. And so a lot of stuff is just up in our heads, which may or may not be a good thing. You never know. But one thing that you can do to work towards something this detailed is what I mentioned earlier on, and it's really the clincher that helped me pass the APR exam and get a grasp of it, was looking at local headlines, whether it's my local paper or local news stories, even national, and taking something that I know nothing about, and saying, okay, if I had just been hired as their PR director and this happened, this crisis, this positive thing, whatever the story is, how would I handle it? What plan would I do? Because truly, if you understand this process, you can be dropped in any industry and still be successful. And I'm a great example of that because I have worked for a retirement community, I've worked for a college, I worked for a United Way nonprofit, and now I'm in an accounting firm. And there was an engineering firm in there somewhere. All of those are completely different, but I'm successful in what I do because I'm applying the principles that you're learning here.
Excellent. Great comments. And we're really at the end of our time, but you can tell that we've got some great comments from people. This is the last session for the summer cohort, but we will be starting up again August 28th for the fall cohort. And each one of you, if you want to be in the fall cohort, just type into the chat window right now, I want to be in the fall cohort, or say, yes, sign me up. And I will make sure to get you into the fall cohort this fall. And we'll also have a couple of other of invitations for you to join. Remember that we want you to keep your effort up even during the time when we're not doing weekly sessions. And also do remember that all of the modules and activities really are self-paced. You're doing them for your benefit. Look at those activities, get them done, and become facile at responding quickly to communication problems. Let's give a big shout out and thank you to our panel, Jessica, Corey, and of course we've got Connie, and also give another shout out also to Mike and also to Whitney. We had a great meeting here today. Thank you all for joining us, and we really appreciate your attention and your comments. I'm going to send the comments to the people who presented. So thank you all for being with us today, and we look forward to seeing you in the fall cohort. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.